in legislatures, school boards, town halls, everywhere across America. Here in Texas, our history is literally under attack. I feel like we can write an obituary to our history, right? It's over. Not really. We're going to fight for it because we're Americans and we are America. And I have an important guest on today, somebody who I'm going to bring up a little bit later, but he's going to talk about that, especially the history of Texas. But I want to talk to you a little bit about what that means to me, what that means to us as a nation, you know, the kind of fear mongering that we see in our country in an effort to basically annihilate the history of who we are, why we even exist, and all of those that struggled before us. Right? And they do it in such a way that they try to terrify, and they being these leftist Marxist crazies, right? They do it in such a way that they target people and say, well, if you celebrate that, if you have a statue in your hometown, if you look at Teddy Roosevelt, for crying out loud, and you appreciate that part of American history, then you're nothing but a racist, a bigot, and you're worthy of erasure. Think about that. Think about what that is doing, even to our own children and to our world. They're not going to know. They're not going to be able, it's like the memory hole. They're not going to be able to spot it when it's actually happening, when there is a historical lesson to be learned. They're not going to see it. Look at what's happening right now. And on today's program, I'm going to have somebody who I think, Russell Molina, who is a hero here in Texas. You're going to hear about this amazing effort he has to protecting the Texas Rangers. He's going to give you some exclusive news, and it's going to blow your minds. And it's going to be national news because he said it right here on the Sara Carter Show. It's going to become national news, and it's going to make a difference, not only for the people here in Texas, but for across our country. And I got to tell you all, like, part of the reason I don't know if you all know this. I've said it before on the show, but I left the DC area and moved with my husband after he retired and our family to Texas. I've worked here a long time. I've covered stories here for decades. I love Texas. I love Texas. I love the land. I love the feel. I love the food. I love the people. I loved going into Mexico. I used to go so much into Mexico. I still do, but it's obviously very terrifying. I love the grittiness about Texas. I love the fact that in San Antonio, they call it, like military city, right? Because there are so many military personnel, and it's such a tight-knit community. And I never even imagined, and as a journalist coming down on the border and making friends with like the Texas sheriffs, all these years that I've been covering their stories, or Texas law enforcement, or even the people that are living on both sides of the border that are dealing with this craziness of this chaos that our nations are still dealing with the drug cartels and the dangers that we're facing on both sides. Those are longtime friends for me, people on both sides of the border, because this is both of our problems, right? And, people would say to me, are you crazy? Why are you moving to Texas? What's going on over there? And I say, everything. Wait until you hear how many people have actually moved to Texas. Wait until you hear it's one of the fastest growing states in the nation, if not the fastest. And Florida as well. There is so much to celebrate here because Texas truly is like everything that America really represents. It's got its pain. It's got its beauty. It's got its accomplishments, its successes. Its history is rich. It's rich American culture. It's diverse. And yes, like I said before, it's very, very gritty. And everything about this state exemplifies those pieces of us, our nation, that are like our treasures, right? I call it our spirit. It's like, I think if America had a heart, its heart would be right here in Texas, right? It really would. It would be right here in Texas. It is like the X gene, right? The Chuck Norris, to the Texas Rangers, right? The Comanche Wars on the Great Plains, the battle on our border to this day. And I've talked about this before. And our ability, our spirit, our driving force in America to survive, right? To overcome all of these obstacles. It's like a microcosm of our great nation. And I think that's why I was drawn to it. That's why my whole life I've always been drawn to it. I mean, I can't put my finger on it exactly, but we're going to try to discover that, you and I together on this podcast. And it's just, I think it's a story that's about all of us and about all of our families. And I'll be right back to talk about that. But I want to talk to you first about Fastest Growing Trees. I'm so excited that they're back and they're a sponsor of this show because I love to garden. And now that I'm in Texas, it's a whole new thing. It's not like Virginia, right? It's not like gardening. I had all these amazing, beautiful flowers in Virginia that I would take care of, and I'd put them all in the front of my house and in the backyard, and I had a little garden. Well, I have a garden here, and I have different plants here, tropical plants, plants that are weather resistant, right? They can handle the heat out here. Because believe me, the 2 months out of the year, June and July, are like smoking hot here in Texas. I mean, barbecues in the afternoon. It's like you want to kind of sleep in during the day if you can, and then just wake up and enjoy the night. Well, you want to have plants, right, around your house. You want to know what you can put out in your home that won't die, that won't be affected by the weather or by the soil. And that's what Fastest Growing Trees does. I mean, they literally are a home base for you to have like your own private gardener, right? Somebody that you can go to and say, hey, I live in this kind of weather. What kind of plants do I need? What can I put in my home? What can I grow in my yard that will be resistant? I'm going for avocados. I'm so excited. And I'll share those with you actually on my Instagram. And that's what fastestgrowingtrees.com does. It allows you to purchase trees, right? Purchase plants that are going to be weather resistant. And right now, you can join over 1.5 million happy Fast Growing Trees customers. You could go to growingtrees.com/Carter, that's CARTER, now to get 15% off your entire order. Can you believe that? Get 15% off of fastestgrowingtrees.com/Carter, fastestgrowingtrees.com/Carter. And then you and I can share pictures of our plants on Instagram together. We could be like our own like pseudo gardeners, right? I mean, I don't know if anybody wants me to garden at their home, but I certainly want to share with you this amazing, amazing new business and website that will help you do right by your home. And I'm very, very excited to share my home with you. So Texas is my state. It really does have my heart. Ever since I started covering stories here, when I was at the Daily Bulletin, maybe over 20 years ago, and traveling through Texas, even when I was a kid with my dad and my mom, and I would, this is way before I moved to Saudi Arabia. Well, I was baby kid. You know, we would take these road trips from California, and I don't if you guys are in my age bracket or any of you remember those great road trips, and I'm sure people still go on these great road trips. We would leave California. My dad, and he would take us. I was maybe 5 years old, 6 years old. Even when we come back on vacation, we do this. We'd pile into the car, right? And we'd take these amazing road trips across the country from California all the way to Alabama to visit my family in Alabama. And of course, we would go through New Mexico. We would go through Texas. And I have just such fond memories of, the old motels and swimming in those pools and hanging out with my family and, eating at Bob's Big Boy, if anybody remembers that, or Sizzler, as my dad would say, the fancy steakhouse, because we didn't have a lot of money. And that was when my dad, was working with Lockheed Martin. And there were times where he would lose his job and then get his job back. Anyways, Texas has always been a part of my life. And for some reason, even in my work as a journalist, it would call to me. I would, always be coming back to Texas, and I would always go back to the most grittiest parts of Texas to tell the stories because it was so real, So real. The people are so real. They don't put on airs. They don't act I mean, for the most part, I'm talking about like down on the border. They will tell you the truth. And when you need them, they will be there for you. Was I afraid to move to Texas right at the beginning? Yeah, I was. I was really afraid. I mean, I'd been living in Virginia in the DC area around all the lawmakers and the action for, nearly 14 years or so. And I was scared. I was like, what am I going to do when I get here? How my family, are they going to adjust? I know they were excited, but I was like, it's a different place. Are you going to adjust to this? And my husband was all for it. And our youngest, Annalise, was like packing her bags right away. I don't know why. She was just so excited about the adventure. She must have that X gene like we have. So she was excited about the adventure. And we got here, and I knew the minute that I got here. I knew it the minute, and we drove, by the way. Let me explain this to you, because I was even on Dan Bongino's show, Unfiltered. On the drive here, I had to stop in Tennessee and like literally find a studio so I could go on Dan's show that night, because I had packed the car with Annalise, my husband, Marty, our dogs. We had 3 dogs and our cat. And our cat was so miserable on this trip. We had to stop at a vet and get medication for the cat, because the minute I put the cat in the car, the cat was poor Barry. I call him Bear, but poor Bear was not only throwing up, but he decided to he just hated it. Just put it this way, there was a mess in his cage, and then I had to let him out. I had to clean everything. And we had the car all piled up. No, I did not have like a fancy delivery service for my animals. And my husband and I had to find really cheap motels along the way. This felt like the road trip when I was a kid, right? So my husband and I had to find these really cheap ass motels on the way that would take all the animals. And sometimes, okay, don't tell anyone, but we snuck them into the rooms. Yes, we did. We did the true American thing. We broke the law. We snuck our animals into the rooms. Yes. And then we tried walking them individually the next day like nobody would notice. Like, there I go, walking with my crazy Chihuahua. Then the next minute I'm trying to walk, Danny the lab, the guide dog. And then the next thing you know, I'm taking Picolola out for a walk, and she's completely insane and barking at everyone and drawing attention to us. So that was the road trip. It took forever. And Dan was very appreciative that I made it on his show that night from Tennessee on the way down. But I'm going to tell you why I'm talking about that road trip, because it culminated in the end. We didn't have our house yet. We had just put in the bid and everything here in Texas. So we couldn't get into the house yet. We had already been given the house. Yes, we bought the house, but we couldn't get in yet because there was a delay, a lag in the move out situation with the people that lived here before, who, by the way, are great friends of ours now. The people we bought the house from, great friends of ours now, because that's how things are here in Texas. So we get into this beautiful community here in Texas, and we stop at this hamburger place. It's like an outdoor, it looks really cool. We see some country singers, performing. Everybody's sitting outside. There's a big outdoor bar. There's a playground. It's just filled with people, and it just looks cool. We don't even know, what it was, or we didn't have anybody tell us to go there. We just pulled up there. It was like, oh, okay, we're going to pull up here. We're going to get some hamburgers. Annalise was really happy. She was right near where we were going to be living, that she was getting out of the car and that she was going to get to play in the playground. Marty and I get there. We're just happy to grab a drink. We're like, oh my gosh, we're going to sit down, get a drink, and get a hamburger because we were starving. And we did have the dogs with us. Yes. And they were allowed. Thank you, God, for Texas. They have outdoor places. You're allowed to bring your dogs. Nobody's throwing a fit. And the dogs were being good. So we get there, and all of a sudden I see it's a fundraiser for military veterans. And it was packed with Texans and people who just love the military and love our veterans. And the singers were up there, and they were taking donations, and people were having a great time. And I felt like, all of a sudden this was after COVID. And I just took this deep breath and I was like, thank you, God. This is where I belong. It just makes me want to cry. It was so beautiful. It was like a perfect moment, like a perfect moment. And my husband, I could just see him sitting there. Y'all know he's a wounded veteran. And coming to Texas was important for me too, because this is a state that truly, truly cares about its veterans, loves its veterans. San Antonio, it's like military city, right? They love their veterans, all kinds of wonderful benefits here for veterans. And just because, and people love them and respect them. And I could just see my husband just kind of well up a little bit, like with tears, like, wow. I'm somewhere where people actually care about the sacrifices. And not that they didn't in Virginia, although it was really weird in Virginia. Now that I compare, I didn't have the kind of relationships in the Northern Virginia area, in Alexandria, Arlington. I had good friends and great people that I knew, but it wasn't the same in the neighborhoods. You know what I mean? It wasn't like that kind of neighborly feeling. Like literally in my neighborhood now, we've got the Cajun truck that comes every weekend and you can go get some Cajun food. And, our neighbors, we talk to each other and we know each other. I didn't feel that way there. And maybe it's just the neighborhoods that I lived in. It wasn't the same, we really love each other here. And it was weird in Virginia too. And maybe it was the whole COVID thing, but I would literally have to walk across. And I said literally, somebody out there said, Sarah, stop saying literally. You know what? It's my daughter. She says literally and technically all the time. Annalise, this is all your fault. I'm going to try to take that out of my lexicon. Just put up with me. I promise you, I'll figure out a way to do it. But it was different here than there. And I remember during COVID, people were so paranoid at the very beginning, and we would have to wear the masks. And I would go out for a walk with my husband and I wouldn't wear the mask because I'm outdoors, for crying out loud. I understand basic science. I'm not in anyone's face, right? And my husband and I would walk without our masks on, and there would be people coming down the sidewalk in Virginia, and they would, I'm not going to say it, they would cross the streets. They would cross the street and give you a dirty look if you're wearing a mask. It's not like that in Texas. Everybody has their own belief. People can wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Everybody has their own thing and their own political beliefs. My gosh, Austin is wild. And when I want my Austin, I go get me some Austin, right? Austin weird, Austin crazy. I do that. But Texas is different. It's America the way it should be. Really, it is. I mean, it's about business, small businesses, caring about each other's neighbor, taking out, getting in a good brawl, and then making up later. It's about putting your nation first, putting your state and everything first, putting freedom first and liberty and the people first. That's what this is about. It's about loving one another. And I know that right now there's a lot of people moving to Texas, and there's some Texans that are like, ho, 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 put the brakes on, cowboys and cowgirls, because we don't want you coming here. No, the people that are coming here, really, I have talked to a lot of them. They are coming here because they can't stand it anymore. And a lot of them are conservative Republican or have switched that way. They're not coming here. Now, granted, there are some here like Beto. It's not even his real name. Francis Beto O'Rourke. He is annoying as heck. And there's a lot of those. But that's not the reason why. People still believe, I still have hope that we're going to be a great nation. We're going to survive this turbulence, whatever this is, this craziness, this that we've been on, this insanity, erasing our history and, pushing Marxist ideologies in our classroom. And my gosh, you guys probably saw this, but, the Biden administration gave a transgender woman who's a man the award on Women's International Day for courage. I mean, all of this insanity. I think the pendulum's going to go back the other way. I don't think we're going to put up with it anymore. That's why you're seeing right now, and I pulled out this little stat because it's awesome, but The total state population right now of Texas is over 30,029,572. And Texas has now been named the fastest growing state in the United States, according to data provided by the U.S. Census Bureau. And according to that report, Texas added 470,708 people between July 1st, 2021 and July 1st, 2022. Imagine how many more have already arrived. And folks, I was one of those people between that July 1st, 2021 and July 1st, 2022, because I came in September of 2021, and I am so glad I did. And I feel so blessed to be a part of the great state of Texas. And I am going full force to do everything I can to ensure that this state is a beacon of light for the rest of the nation, and one that the rest of the nation can follow. I truly believe in this state. I love this state. It is my family now. And so is Allegiance Gold, guys, because these are organizations like Allegiance Gold that actually care about you. They care about me. They want us to survive all of this turbulence. And the way that you can do it is through gold and silver. And right now with Allegiance Gold, you can get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. And I'm going to tell you why this is important, because we've seen what the banks have done, right? Even to Donald Trump Jr., PNC Bank just pushed out his company because he's not woke enough for them. What is going on here? It's supposed to be about cash. We're supposed to be a great capitalist society. We're not supposed to be judging woke and not woke and all of this BS. We saw what happened in Canada. I know I've talked about it a million times, but we can end up losing our freedom. And our freedom is our money too, folks. Our freedom is our money too. And right now, my friends at Allegiance Gold can help protect your IRA, your 401k with physical gold or silver, or have it delivered securely, guess what? Right to your front door. And they're going to educate you on the benefits of physical gold because they care and they want to build a long-term relationship with you. So get $5,000 of free silver on any qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. That's SARA. So don't wait. Call or click today. 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA. SARA. SARA. Or go to protectwithsara.com. We can't control the Biden administration, but guess what? We can prepare. Go 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA or protectwithsara.com. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to the Sara Carter Show here on YouTube and Rumble. I love the opportunity to talk to you about the issues you care about most, and I appreciate your support. Thank you. A lot of people have asked me why I moved to Texas. Why did you pick Texas out of every state in our union when you left Virginia? And I left Virginia about a year and a half ago with my husband. He retired from the State Department. And as you all know, spent the last years of his little bit more than a decade actually working in Virginia, completely blind, after being injured in Afghanistan. And I'd worked in Texas actually here before we decided to move here. I'd been to Texas, I could say for the last 20 years of my life, maybe even more, working along the border, covering stories of the cartels, the battles, even from California to Texas. But it was here in Texas where I felt at home. I was friends with so many Texas DPS, Texas sheriffs, Americans on both sides of the border that I felt like were almost like family to me. This is where I wrote some of my biggest stories the stories that I felt were most important, where we talked about when I was at the Daily Bulletin, the cartel wars and how people, even in Mexico, were suffering and how Americans were suffering from the onslaught of violence that was spilling from our neighbor into the United States. But what was so amazing to Texas for me, and people say, Texas, you don't choose Texas. Texas chooses you. And that's why I have Russell Molina on with me in a little bit. But Texas really chose me because this is a state that has really felt for me like it was the beginning of what our great nation stands for. Everybody here understands what it is to fight for freedom. And in this territory, if you go from the Rio Grande Valley all the way up into the area where I live, which used to be Comanche territory, the land itself reflects that. It's a brutal land. It's a beautiful land. It's filled with history that should never be forgotten on both sides. And what we've seen, I think, over the last 10 years, but really over the last maybe 6 to 7 years, this shift and change of American history where people want to destroy history, both good and bad, where statues have been taken down from Teddy Roosevelt, in front of the Natural History Museum in New York City, to, the Texas Rangers here in Texas, where we're removing our history, where we're removing even Abraham Lincoln is being erased. There is nothing more tragic than what we are seeing right now. My friend Tucker Carlson, and a colleague, he talks about this quite often. I'm going to play a little clip when I bring Russell on of Tucker talking about this. And this was after the George Floyd riots when people started to take, history down. I saw it in Virginia. I saw what was happening across the country. And when my husband retired, and I promise you, I'm going to get Russell Molina on right now. When my husband retired, we finally decided that we wanted to move to a state that truly exemplified the values that were in us. The values of freedom, the values of liberty, where we honored people who struggled, where we weren't afraid to tell the truth. This is a state that represents all of that to me. And by the way, really great tax breaks and really hands-off government for the most part, as long as you don't live in Austin. And without any further delay, I've got Russell Molina here. He's a philanthropist. You're an entrepreneur, Russell, and you're the chairman of the Texas Rangers 2023, and you're trying to keep their history alive. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. No, it's so much more than just talk about their history, really. It comes into the education of the modern Ranger as well, but it's getting that history right. And as you said, it's under attack. And here we have an opportunity to really bring it in full context. We want to tell the full story of the Rangers because it truly is the story of Texas. Consider the fact that they started 13 years before Texas was Texas. So this bicentennial, the Texas Rangers, is going to be the first of many bicentennials, the bicentennial of the Alamo, Goliad, San Jacinto, as well as obviously Texas itself. So it's important that we get this history right in full context, and we got it right. And we're ready to have that conversation, not a debate, but a full conversation with those that are out there trying to destroy the history and trying to rewrite history. We've got it, and we want to engage them. We're ready for them.
I know you are. And when I first met you, and I was so grateful. I was so grateful to Texas DPS for making that introduction. And I was able to talk to you. And the minute I heard your story, I was thinking, I've got to get you on the podcast, because there are people out here, Russell, that in Texas that are trying to dismantle the Texas Rangers. They are trying to erase the history of the Texas Rangers. They are on a mission to do that. I want to play this clip really quick. This is Tucker Carlson. This was a monologue that he did a little while back, right after the George Floyd uprising, and people were taking, statues down, and there were riots happening across the country. But I want you to listen to this, and then I want to talk about it a little bit.
Across the country, mobs are tearing down America's monuments. In the cities of Richmond and St. Paul, Minnesota, they've torn down statues of Christopher Columbus. They did the same thing in Boston. Boston's mayor now says it's time to remove a statue of Abraham Lincoln, the man who freed the slaves. It's racist. In Dallas, they pulled a Texas Ranger statue out of the airport after more than 50 years. In Dearborn, Michigan, they toppled a statue of the former mayor. They did the same thing in Philadelphia. In Nashville, they pulled down a statue of a former U.S. senator. Same in Albany. In Oregon, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington were torn down. In San Francisco, the mob demolished statues of Ulysses S. Grant, Junipero Serra, and Francis Scott Key. On the pedestal of the Key Monument, they spray-painted "Kill the Colonizers" and "Kill Whitey."
Let's talk about that. It's happening across our country. There are teachers across our nation in public schools that are actually indoctrinating children into dismissing our history or taking our history and tearing it apart or ignoring history altogether and creating a whole new history. Unlike we've ever seen in the United States. How difficult of a battle is this for you? I mean, here in Texas, because honestly, they took down that statue. And now you're up against other groups here in Texas that are saying, look, the Texas Rangers, it's a racist organization. It's wrong. They have a litany of accusations against you, which, come on, are not true. They're false. So,
and that's really where, let's talk about this. First off, the Texas Rangers cannot be disbanded. The Texas Rangers will not go away because it's in our state legislature in law that they can't be. So that's the first. So that conversation just needs to be set aside because it's not happening. So let's go, though, to talk about these other things, the racist comments that they killed over 5,000 Mexicans along the border. Completely untrue. And that's really where there's a story that they say that Rangers went and caught slaves in Mexico and brought them back. Completely unfounded. There's not one shred of evidence. They talk about the Rangers performed state-sanctioned violence against the Latinos and Hispanics down the Rio Grande Valley. There's not one doctrine, not one piece of information that says that in any form or fashion. Were there bad Rangers? Yes. But there was bad governors in the state of Texas. And that era that a lot of these individuals go to, that 1910, 1920 period, where you had a guerrilla warfare going on in Texas. You had the Mexican Revolution. You had the most corrupt governor in the state of Texas, who had actually disbanded and fired all the good Rangers and brought in a bunch of thugs. And the group refusing to forget, which I would call them refusing everything. They refused to tell the truth. They refused to get in full context. They refused to have a conversation. But they're saying that those Rangers were thugs themselves. They say it themselves, and they were thugs. The Rangers of the day acknowledge that. The Rangers of today acknowledge that. But that's not the full story. You know, I tell people we want to talk about what happened the year before, the month before, the week before, the day before of an event. And then what happened the next day, the next week, the next month, and the next year. And that's how we learn. And that's how we also don't forget our history. And we talk about it completely. I tell people there's the good and the bad and the ugly of the Texas Rangers. Well, there's far more good, not even close to the bad and the ugly in regards to what has really been accomplished here in Texas. But I will say something, and you can pass this on to Tucker Carlson. That statue that was removed down at Dallas Love Field after 50 years, we're putting it back up. And it's going to go back up in a public place. And I'm making that knowledge to you first. So that's breaking news right there. So you're going to hear about a Ranger going back up, and it's going to be a Texas Ranger statue. And it was the exact same one that was removed from Love Field.
That is just incredible, Russell. Thank you so much for breaking that here on the Sarah Carter Show, because I believe history is so important to all of us. And I feel like history is being just twisted, and it terrifies me, really. I think of 1984, the book and the memory hole, dropping everything into a memory hole. How do we learn from our history if we don't have it anymore? And I think that for me is the biggest deal, especially as a mother, and we raise our children, we raise our children to see all sides of that. One of the things that I think I talked to you about this once, but it was Empire of the Summer Moon. It was a story that was written about the history of Texas, and Killers of the Flower Moon, another book that talked about the Texas Rangers, which I thought was so fascinating, that the very beginning of the FBI really was due to a very good Texas Ranger, an amazing investigator who basically broke the case of the Osage Nation in Oklahoma when so many Osage Native Americans were being killed. And he went in there, he investigated. He didn't even carry a weapon at the time because there was no national police force. Even Americans were concerned about having the FBI. And now maybe there was good reason, but they were worried about the FBI, in a sense, being a national police force. And so there's a lot of history to the Texas Rangers that really has been lost to us unless someone teaches us. Is that why this is so important to you, Russell? I mean, is that why you
Absolutely.
have the
Absolutely.
bicentennial?
Yeah, I mean, it's to get the history right, first off, right? And to get the history in full context, but it's also to get it out there and get that educational piece so that we can bring it to schools and rodeos and livestock shows and sporting events to inform people about the real story and not the cherry picking and the myopic aspect and the presentism that these other groups who just want to destroy things. I tell people it's very easy to destroy stuff. Anybody can destroy something. Let's build something. And that's what we're doing here. We're building something. We're building that history. We're getting it right. We have academia, historians, and all of these experts that are behind this. And again, why is it so important? Because this is the foundation and the lead in to Texas's bicentennial in 13 years. And if we have in 2036, Texas's bicentennial, and it's not celebrations all over this state, we've lost the state. But it all starts with the Texas Rangers. When Stephen F. Austin came to Texas with the original 300 families, which a lot of people don't realize, the reason the Spanish allowed those 300 families to come in the first place and gave them the land grants was they wanted them to be a buffer between the Comanches and the Spanish and the Mexicans. So they figured, okay, let's bring in these other folks to be and then of course that's when Stephen F. Austin started the Rangers in 1823. So there's so much rich history. But going back to your point early on, why is Texas the way it is? Why does Texas have the values and the entrepreneurialism, the tenacity, and all of that? It all starts back in 1823. And it all starts with the men and women who came here, those 300 colonists and those 10 men that were called Rangers, because there was no Texas at the time, to go and protect and fight those bandits and the Indians and combat and make it where there was law and order.
Right. And let's talk about that. And then I want people to know about you because I'm going to talk a little bit I'm going to ask you some questions about your background and everything, because to me, your story is just as amazing. And, but let's talk about that. You know, we're always hearing one side of the story. It was a brutal time in history. I mean, if you think about it, it was nothing like today. I mean, we look at all the amenities we have today. Those 300 families and even the Comanches, they were living on very rugged land. I mean, it gets so hot out here. It's incredible. Dangerous land too. We've got rattlesnakes and, you know, scorpions and tarantulas and also an array of beautiful birds and other creatures out here. But this was a different place. Comancheria was a dangerous, very dangerous, hostile territory. And it wasn't until the Comanches actually got the horses from the Spaniards when they became like the worldwide expert horsemen that they were and fighters that they were. But they were slaughtering families too. It was both ways. I mean, it was like, you came onto our land, you know, the Mexican government allowed you to do that. Whatever, you're the buffer zone, but we're going to come after you. And it became a battle, a blood battle here in Texas.
The Comanches were a tribe that absolutely committed horrendous acts. I mean, torture to them was part of their culture. It wasn't something that they just learned or just started doing. Right. It was in them for hundreds of years, and they were just absolutely vicious on that front. So they didn't give any settlers the possibility of getting away. I mean, they killed women, children. They obviously kidnapped. I mean, it was just full on. So it was an absolute brutal time. There's no question about that. And that's how, when you look at that piece and see what the Indians were doing to us, and we were just trying to protect ourselves. And those Rangers were just doing what was needed to be done at that point in time, as they've always done throughout their 200 years of history. You know, they were doing what the citizens of Texas were asked them to do at that point in time for the environment that they were in.
And that's the thing. That's the thing about history that we all have to, we can't go back and rewrite history. We can learn from it though. We can learn from it and not make those same mistakes again on both sides, on all sides. But if we don't have that history, right, Russell? If we don't know what it is, if we don't teach our children, and I learned this, you know, meeting survivors, you know, from Auschwitz, you know, when I remember meeting survivors from the Holocaust and talking to them, and they're like, we want our stories to be told so that people will never forget. Please don't erase our history. And that comes from those, now, I mean, obviously 200 years ago, there's no one alive except for those books, except for those journals, except for those markers, those statues, those stories that are left for our history. Now, you have a really interesting history, and you and your family, I mean, have been here for generations. This is your home. I mean, I'm a newbie. I still feel like good because I write a lot about Texas and I spend a lot of time in Texas. And now this is my absolute home. I love it so much. Every time I come back, I want to kiss the soil. I'm like so grateful to be a Texan. But tell everybody a little bit about how you and your family, your history and your family's history in this land and why that's so important to you.
So my grandparents actually Nuevo Laredo and Guanajuato, and they came to Houston. My grandmother first, my grandfather later. But they started Molina's Cantina in Houston in 1941, which still exists today, still in the family. So we are Latinos, an entrepreneurial spirit to the core. And fortunately for us, we've been able to have a lot of success in Houston. And I myself went down the financial road. And then now ultimately I've got a different operating businesses. And one of them goes back to 1915 in Houston, actually, called the Hat Store. So we have deep, deep roots in Texas and deep roots in Houston, and we're very proud of that and for what we've been able to do and all of the impact that we've been able to make across individuals as well as community and businesses as well. People ask about how did I get involved with the Texas Rangers? Well, I go back 20 years with them, but my father was a sheriff here in Texas and a judge as well, justice of the peace and a sheriff. So I've got long, deep roots for law enforcement here. And I came up with the bicentennial aspect of utilizing it to really have it where we could get this message out there from an educational piece. 7 years ago is when I started on it. So this is something I've been at for a long time. And I'm just so proud to see where we are with it because we've got traction. If you look at our state host committee, we got President Bush, Nolan Ryan, Ross Perot Jr., Taylor Sheridan, the Four Sixes Ranch, King Ranch. I mean, it's a makeup of Texas itself and people who love Texas and will support and are supporting Texas. And that's where we have this opportunity flying the Ranger flag to bring people to it, but then use that as an educational piece to educate not only about the Rangers, which again, you can't have the conversation about Texas without the Rangers being in it, but bringing on a complete full aspect of that.
And I guess that leads me to the next question, which is how that reflects. That's just a microcosm of everything in America, right? When you think about this, I mean, the Texas Rangers are unique and to their own and to Texas, but it really is a microcosm about preserving the history across our great nation. And I mean, there are very few people like you that have taken that time to say, wait a minute, I want to dedicate my life to ensuring the preservation of our history and for our family. And I think that is what is so unique. Do you think there are lessons that people can learn from what we're doing here in Texas, what you are doing specifically here in Texas? And by the way, that is so cool. Your restaurant, you told me, and I have to throw it out there because everybody who goes to Houston has to go here. And it is, apparently it was George Bush Sr.'s favorite restaurant, right? In Houston. He used to eat there all the time.
All the time. Yeah. Actually, one of his last meals a month before he passed away, my cousins actually took food to his house. So it was one of the last meals he actually ate. But yes, but going back to, does this transcend beyond Texas? Absolutely. You know, getting this history, not only just to preserve it, but to get it right and make sure that you can stand on what it is that we're talking about and what we're saying and that it is right. You know, some of these naysayers out there, there'll be 5 or 6 different people who've looked at a particular incident. And 5 may say, this is how it came down, it's relatively close. And there's one outlier. And they will go pick that one outlier and say, well, that's the truth. That's the only one that matters. And that's where, no, you can't do that. You've got to go get other peer individuals who've looked at this and say, okay, what's the majority? What's the as far as the opinion of what really happened here? And one of the ones, just to talk about Porvenir massacre, right? This is one that if you hear about these groups that want to tear down the Rangers, they always go to Porvenir and say they slaughtered 15 innocent men of all ages. And there were a couple of young boys that were there. And there's no question they did. And there was a book that came out where the guy claimed that he discovered something new. That incident has been the number one incident that has been looked at in ranger history by so many scholars. So it's not something, there's nothing new. But what is new is there was an archaeological dig that happened a couple of years ago. And they went out and they found the spot that they feel was actually the location that this massacre happened. And they dug up, and what did they find? They found casings, shell casings, not only from ranger guns, but there were ranchers that were present, but there was military. The U.S. Army was there, and they found casings from all three of those groups that were there. Now, if you hear from these naysayers, all you ever hear is the Texas Rangers did this, the Texas Rangers did. Not true. There's hard factual evidence, documentary evidence that shows that there were three parties that were there. So who did the killing? All three? Just one? Well, it doesn't matter. It happened, but it certainly isn't all just the Rangers. But again, keep in mind, what was happening in that period of time was a guerrilla warfare in Texas. But yes, it was a slaughter that shouldn't have happened. There was no ranger, legitimate ranger of the day that justified it, nor do any of the rangers of today. But let's bring it at full context. It wasn't just the Rangers. So you don't hear them trying to beat up the U.S. Army.
100%. And you know what? I think that you brought up such an important point. We're still piecing together history. We didn't exist then. We can only piece it together through the evidence that we're finding, through the writings, through the understanding of how things evolved from that point forward. And I think that's what makes your group so important, and other groups that are preserving history so important, especially to future generations of Americans. And I got a couple more questions for you before I let you go, but this is a great one. At the tricentennial celebration in 2123, what do you hope they will say about you, and what do you hope they'll say about this bicentennial?
That I made a difference, that I've actually improved the lives of so many of these Rangers and Ranger families. I put a light on them like they've never had it on before, because they don't take that limelight. That's not the way that they go do their job. And that people are knowledgeable about why they're important and what they do for rural Texas, and how they're the lead investigative unit on all of these violent crimes that happen across this state outside of the urban areas. So that's what I really hope that they see. But also, there's a memorial that we're building, one of the main items that we're raising funds for. If you can imagine, there's not a memorial in Texas to those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, which is their life, to what they deserve. And the one that does exist, there's over 100 Ranger names not even part of it. So I know that monument is a testament to the work that I've done, and those families who have already lost individuals and those who will lose loved ones, they will have a place of honor and respect that they can go to honor and respect those that gave that ultimate sacrifice. So there's a lot, I think, that will come out of what is being done here, but that will be one of my proudest, most biggest accomplishments, is knowing that that memorial gets built and funded, and it's going to be a beautiful memorial.
Oh, wow. If anyone wants to help donate, where can they go? What can they do to help be a part of this? I know there are something like me, so many Texans that want to be a part of this. What can we do? Where do we go to make the donations? And how can we find out more about supporting the Texas Rangers and being involved in this bicentennial this year?
Real easy. The website, TexasRanger2023.org. Texas Ranger, no S, 2023.org. There's a calendar which will show all the events that we're doing across the state of Texas, as well as the items that we're raising funds for, as well as the ability to make a donation right there online. So there's sporting clay shoots, galas. We actually now have a community and recruitment day. So the other thing that has now come out of this is it's a recruitment opportunity for law enforcement. Not only DPS, to showcase all the different divisions of DPS. So not just the Rangers are but one division. You've got troopers, you have forensics, you have aircraft, you have all these other divisions, but we're also partnering with local law enforcement, the county sheriff, as well as local PDs. And we're going to have a day to be able to interact with the public, to have them have the opportunity to come learn about the career of being in law enforcement, And maybe somebody doesn't want to go be in DPS and get a duty station somewhere in Texas away from their home, but they want to serve their local community. Hence why we partnered up with the local sheriffs and local PDs. So we have all of that going across the state of Texas throughout 2023. And we're going to have our grand finale in Austin, November the 18th, 19th. And we've got a beautiful barbecue on the grounds of the Capitol, and we'll have a gala. But we have got there's all types of other activations that are happening. For instance, March the 30th, Texas Ranger baseball.
I'm going there in November.
President Bush, Nolan Ryan walking out onto the mound, throwing out the first pitch with the Texas Rangers. And we have a whole setup that Texas Ranger baseball is going to be doing. So we have a lot of those type of events that are going to be happening outside of what I call our signature events. So we would love to have people get engaged as much as they would like to, but it's important we get the word out there. It's important that we get people understanding that there's real history that needs to be told, and don't get caught up by these naysayers who are cherry picking and saying one thing about the Rangers, and that's all they can say about it, because that's not what it's all about.
Thank you so much. And my producers have one question they just threw my way, and I am so curious. Is Chuck Norris involved in any of this? Should we?
Absolutely, he is. Absolutely. The good that he did for the Rangers. Chuck Norris. Yeah, and how that went across the world, right? So that really elevated in such a different way. Now, understand this. He wore a black hat in that series. Rangers don't wear a black hat. But anyway, Chuck Norris is heavily involved. He will be participating in events, and he is a wonderful Texan. He's an honorary Texas Ranger as well.
Well, I got to get him on the podcast, and I'm definitely going to do everything I can to get the word out. We are going to work diligently at this all year. We're going to make sure you get all the support you need, Russell Molina, right here from the Sara Carter Show, and everybody else out there. I'm so grateful that you broke the big news that the statue is going to be put back up. I don't know if you have a date yet or if you want to give anything away, but I'm more than happy to listen to that, and we will definitely be there to cover it. You're so awesome. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for letting me be on the air. And yes, we do have a date. It's going to be in the middle part of April. I'll keep you tuned in on that because I'd love to have you guys there. It made national news when it was taken down. It needs to make national news when it goes back up. So please remember, go TexasRanger2023.org.
Thank you so much, Russell Molina, for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. I can't wait to have him back on. It's just so incredible, that conversation, so incredible what people are doing to save our history, right? I know somebody else who's doing the same, and that's Mike Lindell. Mike Lindell with MyPillow. What great products. What a great company. I'm so excited to have Mike Lindell be a part of this show as well. And by the way, you all know this, but I fill my house with MyPillow products. I have everything in my home. All the sheets on our beds, yes, MyPillow. Our dog beds, yes, MyPillow. Slippers, MyPillow. And all my kids have MyPillow products because they are great products made in America. And because Mike Lindell cares about us, I want to give back. I love giving back to American companies and people that care about this country. And for a limited time, when you buy one MyPillow 2.0, guess what? You're going to get another one free with the promo code Carter. With the promo code Carter. Go to mypillow.com for MyPillow 2.0. Buy one, get one pricing plus discounts on your favorite MyPillow products like towels, sheets, slippers, and MyPillow dog beds. And I've got one little dog right here, Maisie Daisy Buttercup, and she's laying on her MyPillow dog bed right here in my studio while I am talking to you. So you want to get this. Stay cool and sleep better with the MyPillow 2.0. Buy one, get one free sale going on now at mypillow.com, promo code Carter. mypillow.com, promo code Carter. So everyone, before I let you go, I wanted to let you know I will be attending the bicentennial here in Texas. I'm so excited about that. I'm even more excited about the fact that Chuck Norris is going to be there. What an American icon. What a hero. How exciting is that he's helping with this? And, and I loved Walker, Texas Ranger. What an amazing show. And I want to just leave you with this thought. What's happening here in Texas is not just about Texas. It's not just about preserving Texas history. This is about preserving American history. This is about preserving our history so that our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren will know what really happened in our nation. the good, the bad, and the ugly, just like Russell Molina said. And by the way, one of my favorite spaghetti westerns with Clint Eastwood. But it is about the good, the bad, and the ugly. We have to know and understand all of it so that we don't repeat those mistakes, so that you and I together have a full understanding of who we are and what we are. Too many people have given too much to fight for this nation. The blood on the land here in Texas, from the battles long ago with the Comanches and the first settlers, to our American Revolution, to World War I, World War II, Iraq, Afghanistan. So many of our friends, my personal friends, people that I loved, have lost their lives. We don't want to forget them. And we don't want to forget the people that have made those sacrifices, like my husband, right? Who spend the rest of their lives, without sight or without an arm or without a leg, or battling TBI, traumatic brain injury, or post-traumatic stress disorder. And to all of the Americans, no matter where you're from in the world, the greatest melting pot on earth right here, and the most beautiful, diverse nation on planet Earth, we have to protect that. We have to be proud of what we are and who we are. And yeah, do we need to be ashamed of our past? In some cases, yes, but we can't run from it. We can't hide from it. We can't pretend that it didn't exist, because we're all here today because of that, because of all of the good things and the bad things that have happened to us over history. And we're a young nation. We're a fragile nation. And if we don't protect this nation now, God help us, there won't be any place for us to go or any place for people to turn to if America ceases to be what it is. Thank you so much for following me. Thank you so much for being a part of my life. It means so much to me. I want you to follow me on Truth. I love Truth. Thank you, Devin Nunes, for having me on your podcast on Rumble as well. And it's at Sara Carter Official, at Sara Carter Official on Truth, Twitter at Sara Carter DC, at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless our great nation. God bless our history. And God bless the great state of Texas.